On January 12th, our good friend Robert Meyer Burnett revealed on his daily podcast, Robservations, over at his YouTube channel, The Burnett Work, that he may or may not have gotten a chance to read the unused Colin Trevorrow Star Wars Episode 9 script. This script may or may not be dated December 16th of 2016, only 1 week before the untimely death of Carrie Fisher, and was most likely written to reflect The Last Jedi. As such, it offers a rare glimpse into what might have been. Unlike the rumors covering the Lucas or J.J. Abrams cuts of The Rise of Skywalker, this is a wholly different take on the third film in Disney's sequel trilogy. Trevorrow obviously left the movie, and he was always somewhat cryptic about why. But the recurring theory at the rumor exchange, so do keep that grain of salt in handy, is that he left over Lucasfilm's decision not to alter The Last Jedi's outcome in light of Carrie Fisher's passing. A likely scenario is that Trevorrow couldn't find a way to make the film work without Leia and Luke's roles reversed. After breaking down the script over at his own Robservations podcast, Robert made a guest appearance at Midnight's Edge's very own Toxic Femininity, where he read and shared even more details from the script. After that, he broke even more details in the next episode of Robservations.
Dun, dun, dun. Mary. Hey, speaking of...
I had to wait to give her that moment. I had to see that face. Welcome, Robert.
I was reading from a different screen. What the hell?
Hello.
Yes. Hi.
How are you, ladies?
We said your name 3 times by now, so like Beetlejuice, you just appeared.
I just appear.
Yeah, appreciate that.
I just am told to show up here, and I just show up. You know,
Nice.
Tom said you should jump on. I had no idea.
That's a bit to keep track of, so Robert graciously allowed us to use his Robservations episodes and intercut them with his revelations from our Toxic Femininity podcast to give you the most complete summary and overview of Colin Trevorrow's Star Wars Episode 9, The Duel of Fates, to date. As we bring this to you, be sure to head on over to the Burnett Work and subscribe to one of the best and without a doubt most positive and uplifting channels covering genre media and the entertainment industry on YouTube.
Colin Trevorrow did, with his writing partner, Mr. Derek Connolly, did in fact finish a draft, multiple drafts I'm told. I've only looked at a draft, or maybe I looked at something else. Who knows? I could have actually looked at, maybe somebody brought me stone tablets off the mountains behind Pasadena. But I did look at something. I will confirm that. And I will show you at least. There's this. Star Wars Episode 9. And it's called Duel of the Fates. And here's the crawl. Yes. That was the crawl on a draft of Duel of the Fates. This script opens with people on a mission, droids on a mission. And where does it start? Something that Star Wars fans would have loved. At the Kuat shipyards is where it opens. What a cool place. There are Star Destroyers being constructed. The First Order is building their war machine. And the Kuat shipyards is something that has always been in Star Wars mythology, where a lot of these ships are built. And I thought that was kind of cool. And immediately on this mission, we begin with BB-8 and Rose Tico. Yes, that's right. BB-8 and Rose Tico open this script and open this story. And Rose and BB-8 are... By the way, can I just say that I hope that Kelly Marie Tran never, ever reads this script ever. Because Rose Tico is front and center throughout this whole movie, and her character is great as written. So there, Rose has been on a Kuat moon, and BB-8 is infiltrating. He's been painted different colors, and he's infiltrating the First Order Well, where they're building these ships, and it's a lot of industry happening. There's an orbital ring, and then there's the moon below. And there are the beleaguered workers who aren't being treated very well by the First Order. And we jump right into it. And the plan is, let's see, Finn and Poe are also, they're at a different section. Everybody's working together. R2 and 3PO are not with them. And what was really interesting is that you find out that Finn, in the beginning of the movie, he met stormtroopers that he knew when he was being trained. And he realizes that there's a whole group of stormtroopers like him that are sort of lost. They feel bad about what's going on. They're not down with any of this. And Finn realizes that this could be an opportunity to exploit. And eventually Rey shows up. And the plan is, what they're going to do is they're going to send up, the ships are fueling from, there's basically an elevator that goes up from the moon to the ships. And there is a plan where they're going to send up, they're basically going to gum up the works and explode in this conduit, blow everything to hell. And of course, unfortunately, it doesn't work. They're thwarted. And there is a First Order, there's stormtroopers, and there's all kinds of people. And as Rose says, the power shaft delivers raw ore up to the orbital ring. And what they're going to do is that shaft, they're going to detonate a device in there to blow that all up, and it's all going to explode. And they think this is a great plan, and that it's all going to work. It's going to take the whole thing down along with their new fleet. They're going to blow up the Quat shipyards. That's what they're going to do. And what's really interesting is the dialogue between all the characters here it's incredible. And I thought it was hilarious. It's very Star Wars, and it's very men on a mission, and everybody has their place, and it's very, very, very funny, and it's classic Star Wars. And even Poe says, "Okay, let's blow this thing and go home." There's a little bit of fan service in there, but it works. It works really, really well, and you get a sense of where the galaxy is and how things are how the First Order is treating people, and this becomes very important later on in the script. Long story short, the First Order is on to them. They try, when they detonate their devices, it doesn't work. The First Order is able to contain the blast, and the First Order comments on, come on, man, their tactics are so old, they didn't think we saw this coming. Well, they did see this coming, and everything goes foobar. There's an Admiral Vaughn from the First Order, says their outdated tactics are pitiful. And, of course, it doesn't work, but as rebels are wont to do, like trying to rescue Princess Leia when you land on the Death Star and you find out she's there, they change their plans. And working together in a great Star Wars, a classic Star Wars thing, you see suddenly Rey is revealed to herself. She's been dressed as a Tusken Raider. She is revealed that she has used the Smash lightsaber and her staff and created her own weapon, a double-bladed staff lightsaber hybrid that is unique to her, that she has made, which is badass. And they talk about, and she's recognized by children as a Jedi, and it's great. And there's a big battle. And what happens is this. Poe and Finn and Rose and BB-8 and Rey steal a Star Destroyer. That's right. They steal a new dreadnought, an Eclipse-class Star Destroyer, and the end of the whole sequence is they take off with it. And this whole sequence is very reminiscent of the rescue of Han Solo from Return of the Jedi. And it's a fantastic sequence, and it comprises the first 15 pages of the script, and it's just you can't imagine something that's more Star Wars than this. And it doesn't rely on MacGuffins or anything weird. It's all owned. It all works. And then, of course, then we meet immediately. We see a ship called the Knife 9. that has the Knights of Ren in it. And the Knights of Ren are there, and they demand answers. They're not happy about this. And you get to see, you sort of meet the Knights of Ren here. The Knights of Ren meet Admiral Vaughn, and then Hataska Ren of the Knights of Ren kills Admiral Vaughn and is pissed. So then we cut to, get this, Coruscant. One of the big settings of this script is, of course, Coruscant, and that becomes a huge, huge deal. And we see that Coruscant is no longer the vibrant city or the city planet that we knew from the prequels. Coruscant is the new structure is built atop the Deco architecture of the Old Republic, growing older as we descend into the decrepit streets below, sedimentary layers of progress. And Coruscant is a occupied planet. The First Order has built their own citadel, their own palace there, and the people, especially the people at street level, everyone has become scavengers. Everybody is looking around for their next scrap. It is an entire population that is under the jackbooted horror of the First Order, and nothing is good going on there. And Hux has appointed himself Chancellor Hux, and he's fond of addressing his people. And in this opening scene, they find you see Hux addressing everybody, and they found a traitor who helped them steal that Star Destroyer, and his name is Biss Kova. And Biss Kova is executed with a light blade guillotine. So we really get a sense that the First Order is, of course, they've taken over. The galaxy is under there. It's all bad. And their Commander Hux has a Commander Selleck that works with him. And, of course, they are in league, you find out, with a bunch of different alien warlords. And there's a sequence that's very similar to the scene on the Death Star when the Imperial generals were talking. Until this battle station is fully operational, we are vulnerable. It's a scene like that. And these warlords are in league with the First Order, so we get a sense that the First Order has allies. It's not just them. They've got a group. There's lords, and there's various. One of the aliens is mentioned as being a Weequay, which I thought was pretty cool. And they want to know they know that Rey is out there. They know the Last Jedi is out there. And what they really want to know is, where the hell is Kylo Ren? Kylo Ren has been... he's gone. No one can find him, and all Hux knows is that Kylo Ren has gone in search of something, in search of great power. He is, of course, the Supreme Chancellor, and we cut from this meeting with all of these warlords to Mustafar. And yes, we see Kylo Ren. He's made it to Mustafar, but Kylo Ren he's alone. And he does have a droid with him, a la Darth Maul. And he's got stubble. He's clearly been searching for quite some time. This has been going on for a long time. He goes to Mustafar, and we discover, shockingly, and I loved this, Kylo Ren is being haunted by Luke's Force Ghost. Luke is with Kylo Ren. And Luke is saying things like, this is where the dark path leads, an empty tomb. And Kylo is arguing with Luke. Kylo says, and where did your path lead? You're a ghost. And Luke says, I know what you're searching for, Ben. Your master promised you strength, but you feel hollow. There is a back and forth, and I just think it was awesome that Kylo Ren is being haunted by Force Ghost Luke. So we're now on page 20, and Kylo Ren is there, and Luke is trying to convince him to go home to Leia, and Kylo says, I'm going to be more powerful than any Jedi, even you. And in Mustafar, in the Vader's temple, there is the Sith holocron, and the Sith holocron is activated, and it turns on, and then a hologram of Emperor Palpatine is seen. So yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, Palpatine was in the original version of Colin Trevorrow's idea, but only as a hologram being projected out of the Sith hologram, or the Sith holocron, and you see Palpatine, and the holocron, this recording is for Vader. So Palpatine is addressing Vader. Lord Vader, young Skywalker will soon be ours. I've foreseen it, but we must prepare for the unseen. Should he strike me down, you will take him to the Remnicor system. There you will find Tor Valum, master of the Sith, who instructed me. Tor Valum, spelled T-O-R, second word V-A-L-U-M. So the Emperor is telling Vader that he needs to take, in case something happens to the Emperor, Luke is to be taken to see Tor Valum, the person who instructed Palpatine. And what happens here is the holocron then realizes, it scans Kylo Ren and realizes Kylo Ren is not Vader. And then it starts to short out, and a burst of red lightning blasts out of the holocron and fries Kylo Ren. And he's horrible, as it is said. The invasive pulse of energy spreads over Kylo's face like a cancer. Horrible, raw, purple veins streak through his skin. He screams in deep, unbearable agony. And at this time, we cut to the Resistance base on Korolev. And that's when Princess Leia is introduced, and she feels what's happening to Ben. And on the base on Korolev, Chewbacca is there with her, and Lieutenant Connix is there. She's has a scar from battle, and they tell Princess Leia that the mission has come back from the Kuat shipyards, and they are shocked to see the Eclipse Star Destroyer, which they actually land on the planet, and the giant Star Destroyer. And of course, what's very funny is there is a moment here where Rey actually, there are still First Order officers that were on the bridge of the ship, and of course, they've had their minds. Rey can do the Jedi mind trick on them, and they have to get rid of them. But Leia doesn't kill them. She has them escorted off, and Leia and Poe have a very funny exchange with Rose, and how Rose and Poe stole this Star Destroyer, and it's very funny. It's a very funny thing. And then there's a great moment, great scenes with Finn and Rey talking about how Rey believes that she's failed, and Rey is having really a crisis of conscience. She doesn't think, after seeing people on the Kuat moon that recognize her as a Jedi, she doesn't think that she's going to be able to be what everybody wants her to be. She just doesn't think she's strong enough. And Finn talks about, are you still sensing Kylo Ren? And Rey admits to Finn that she has nightmares every single night. She says, every night I wake up screaming, every night another bad dream. And Finn asks, is it him? And Rey says, there's something between us and I can't explain it. Finn says you have to shut him out. And that Finn says he can't change. It's too late. And Rey says it's never too late to change. You taught me that, Finn. And it's a really great sequence, and it just solidifies their relationship, and it's very interesting. And then they realize that the Star Destroyer that they've stolen is full of Imperial weaponry. TIE fighters, walkers, urban assault vehicles, incredible amounts of heavy artillery, but they realize all they need now is an army big enough to make it all work. So basically what ends up happening is that Rey, consulting the Jedi texts that we saw from Ashto in The Last Jedi, discovers not about the Jedi holocron, or the Sith holocron. What she discovers, what she has read, is that underneath the Jedi Temple on Coruscant is a communication system that predates, it's from the Old Republic. It's from over 1,000 years ago. It predates the Empire. And basically, this communication system is like the flames, the pyres that are lit by the Gondorians in Return of the King. This communication system is connected to 50 other planets. And this communication system can be activated underneath the Jedi Temple on Coruscant if they can get there, and it will send a signal out that will hopefully get people who are waiting to hear this signal to come to the aid of the Resistance. A force beacon, as Rey calls it. And of course, Finn says there's no way it still works, and Poe comments that old Republic technology is way better than the junk we have today. And that the First Order, who has choked off all communications between solar systems, star systems, can't do anything about this because it predates their technology. They wouldn't even be able to pick it up. They wouldn't know what it was. So they decide that they are going to go to Coruscant, see if they can get planetside, go to the Jedi Temple, and turn on this beacon that will hopefully attract all of, well, people they need. And Rey says that hope is all that they have left. And so Rey is also, she's still training, and as we see her training, Luke, Force Ghost Luke, appears to her as she's in pain. She's not the all-powerful being that we saw in the finished rise of Skywalker, but she is training, overseen by Force Ghost Luke. So Force Ghost Luke is talking to both Rey and Kylo Ren. He's pushing Rey to become stronger in the Force, and he's trying to get Kylo Ren to pull back and let Ben Solo out, which I thought was incredibly fascinating. And definitely Luke is the Ben Kenobi, the Force Ghost Ben, for both of the characters, which I thought was really an interesting way to go. I'm like, well, why wouldn't you go that way? And it's very interesting. So Kylo Ren makes it back to Coruscant, actually, and after being blasted by the Sith holocron, he's in bad shape, and his face is messed up, and he is actually, Mandalorian armor is being smelted, and they're putting it onto his face, his actual face, and it's sizzling into the skin, but they're using Mandalorian armor. Now, keep in mind, this was written in it was 2016, and he's got damaged veins down his neck. He is not looking good. It sort of reminded me about how Palpatine looked after his Force blast was deflected back at him by Mace Windu. That's probably where we were at with Kylo Ren. But Kylo Ren is not. He ends up okay, and he confronts Hux, and he says, "You know, I don't need titles. He doesn't need to be the Chancellor the way Hux is the Chancellor." And Kylo Ren, after he does get up, he's very dismissive. And of course, Luke is still trying to appeal to Rey, and Rey says things like, balance, the dark suffocates the light, light extinguishes the dark, over and over and over. How is that balance in the Force? Luke says, I know that anger. I had it. My father had it too. Rey says, so says my master, and his master before him, 1,000 masters so eager to tell us how to live. And Rey is basically, as Force Ghost Luke is talking to her, Rey has said, I spent my whole life wanting a family. I've got one now. I won't abandon them. And Luke says the Force is speaking to her. And Rey says, maybe I'm not who the Force thinks I am. And Luke says, who are you? And she says, I am no one. And what's really interesting about that is Luke says, if you really believe these things, then maybe the last Jedi is dead. And she says, maybe he is, referring to Luke. It's very interesting. And all of that I thought was really, really great stuff. And of course, then Kylo, of course, goes to Hux and says, there's places I have to go, there's people I have to see, and apparently all has been well in my absence. And Kylo Ren says to Hux, I don't need grand displays or processions or titles, Chancellor, and basically says, I've got better things to do. I've got stuff I need to do. And Hux says, is this power in the Sith texts? You found it? Kylo says, it's within my reach. And he actually says the ability to destroy a planet will be insignificant, Kylo says. And Kylo says, find the resistance, wipe them out, and leave the girl to me. And then, of course, before Kylo leaves, he takes Darth Vader's mask and he says he understands Vader now, and he understands his weakness and your pain. And Kylo says, you allowed love to cloud your judgment. And Kylo throws off Vader's helmet off a balcony on Coruscant into the clouds, and it falls to the ground and shatters. And that's the end of that. And then Kylo is going to take off in his silencer and head off to find a planet called Remnicor. Kind of like Exegol, although in this script it's not Exegol. And then, of course, Rey also is going on her journey. She needs to find where she's supposed to go. She doesn't know. They don't have holocrons. They're not looking for daggers or any of that stuff. And there's a place that she thinks she needs to go. And so Rey and Poe and Chewbacca take off, and they're going to go basically to a planet and see if they can find somebody who can help Rey figure out where she is supposed to go. And then there's Leia back home with the troops, and you've got everybody splitting up. So basically, you've got now Kylo has taken off, and he's supposed to go find this Sith Lord on the planet of Remnicor. Rey and Poe have taken off to find out where she's supposed to go to find Kylo Ren. She doesn't know where she's supposed to be or what's happening. And Leia and Rey, before they take off, by the way, before they leave, Rey has a great exchange with Leia, where and all of this, Rey is not, the great thing about this script is Rey is very much in doubt of who she is. She's not in command of all of her powers. She's obviously powerful, but she has this conversation where she's talking to Princess Leia, where Rey says she can save Kylo Ren. And Leia says, I believe that once, like you. Rey thinks there's good in him, a la Luke and Vader. And Leia says, there's good in all of us, but the boy she knows is gone. And that Rey says, well, Luke trained me well. And Leia says, you can't train for certain things. And Leia and her have this great exchange. And Rey says, there are rules, Jedi rules. And Leia says, written by who? Some old man 1,000 years before you were born. And then Leia says, my whole life I've heard about balance. And I don't even know what that means. And then Leia says, this is really interesting. You're not like my father or my brother. You're new. Whatever happens, Rey, remember the Force chose you, Rey. Your story isn't written by anyone else. And then basically what ends up happening after that is obviously the First Order was eventually able to track their missing Star Destroyer, and the rebel base on Korolev, kind of like what we saw, is evacuated. All the Eclipse Dreadnought now becomes the de facto headquarters of the Resistance, full of Imperial troops, and it's pretty great. And they escape, and then back on Coruscant, what ends up happening with Finn, Rose, R2, and 3PO, the plan is they have to turn this beacon on, and it's very cool. R2 is going to project a hologram of Leia to be projected across the 50 planets that are going to receive this beacon. So it's once again Princess Leia saying, help us, you're our only hope. But instead of just to Obi-Wan Kenobi, it's to the galaxy. It really is written like when the flames of Gondor alert Rohan, and you see that great moment where the fires burn. Well, what the script does is it jumps between different places in the galaxy, and it shows different places that are receiving this signal, where presumably they even mention, for those of you who are Star Wars fans, they mention the Bendu monks, and there's different places, but you see Leia and you see her hologram speaking at all of these different planets, and it's really cool. I mean, it's a really cool scene. But my favorite of the scenes, and it sets up what Lando Calrissian does, it sets up Trandosha Palace night, Bosk sitting like a sultan in his den of pleasures, turns angrily toward the hologram projected from his servant droid, So this message is getting out through droids. It's getting out all over the place. And Leia talks about our voices will not be silenced. Bosk looks out the window at the light connecting to a red rock spire in the distance, and he clenches his fist because I'm sure he has no love for the First Order either. And what's really interesting is one of the last places you see it is it cuts to Tatooine. And it shows a boy and his sister at the base of a moisture evaporator watching their R6 unit play a hologram. So you go back to Tatooine, and Leia, the hologram, is saying at this point, Leia says, we can no longer live in the shadow of the First Order. We must step into the light. And then, of course, it gets cut short by the First Order, who takes it down. And then once that happens, Rose and Finn and R2 and 3PO then find themselves fleeing into the streets of Coruscant, and they find there is an entire underclass. The people of Coruscant, once a bright, vibrant center of trade to the galaxy, are now the poor en masse, and they have nothing, and they've been cut off from civilization. So you basically have a population. They're not Ewoks, but they have been reduced to almost homelessness, poverty. I mean, definitely there was something analogous there. And, Finn just can't believe how many people are living underground. And Rose says, rich folks don't spend much time thinking about who and what they're standing on. And it's very funny. There's the R2 and 3PO material in this script is gold. Literally gold. And as they're going into the bowels of the city, C-3PO says, I'm afraid all my knowledge of Coruscant is limited to the upper levels. And R2, of course, beeps at him. And C-3PO says, elitist? Where do you even learn that word? And Finn, of course, having left because he was conscripted by the First Order, and he left being a stormtrooper, all of that comes into play in all this. And it really resonates. I mean, it means something. It means something larger, and it plays in to the whole idea of a rebellion and what does it mean to want political reform. And it really gets into the nitty-gritty of all these people of Coruscant. And I love the fact that Coruscant being the center of really the Republic and seeing it so turned upside down, they are ripe for a rebellion. And Finn and Rose and R2 and 3PO are just the people to mobilize that, to get those people ready to go and to rise up. They basically start an uprising, and they begin to organize that, and finding the ex-stormtroopers. And Finn even meets a character that he knew from his training days. And then at the same time, when, of course, like in the movie, where, like in Rise of Skywalker, when Rey and Poe leave, they're pursued by the Knife Nine with, of course, the Knights of Ren in it. And it's all very, very interesting. And they go to a planet called Bonadan. And the planet of Bonadan is where Rey is going to find out where she needs to go. Kylo Ren, on page 45 of this draft of the script, lands on Remnicor. He makes it to Remnicor. And it's very similar to what happens on Exegol. The feeling is there. Kylo approaches an ancient stone military battlement consumed by time. Skeletons of fallen war beasts litter the terrain. Whatever battle happened here, it ended centuries ago. He passes empty suits of armor, robes draped over broken shields, flags flutter in the wind. A Sith helmet on the ground, skull visible within, a reminder that while the Jedi live on, the Sith become dust, which I thought was very interesting. His tracking beacon flashes a single red dot. He detects a life form. So he goes into a fortress. There is a fortress on Remnicor. He goes into that fortress. He enters a chamber with broken spaceship parts and technology and piles of ore. And he hears a voice that whispers to him. And the voice says, reveal yourself. And it is, in fact, Tor Vellum. And Kylo ignites his lightsaber. And Kylo says, and this is important from what people are saying, Kylo says, I seek the Sith Master Tor Vellum. Tor-Vellum answers, I am no master. And the way it's described, mountain of junk moves. From it, as if disguised from within, comes Tor-Vellum, the 7,000-year-old ancient alien of unknown origin, spindly intense, sinew and muscle pulled tight. And then he says, but I was once called Tor-Vellum. And Kylo says, you trained Darth Plagueis? And Tor-Vellum says, that means nothing. That name means nothing to me. And then, of course, Kylo flashes his lightsaber in anger, and Kylo says, does your life? And Tor-Vellum says, you threaten me with death, how amusing. Kylo says, you are weak, I feel nothing. Tor-Vellum says, you feel what I allow you to feel, child. And they have a conversation, and Tor-Vellum Kylo has removed his mask, and it shows his damaged face. His face is veined, corrupted, worse than we remember. Tor-Vellum appears oddly entertained. Tor-Vellum says, oh, you wish to obtain the power of those who came before. Take your place among the gods of Mortis. Kylo says, I do. Tor-Vellum says, so you can rule the galaxy without armies, without spaceships. Kylo says, yes. And Tor-Vellum says, yet you fear the frailty of your vessel. You, meaning, I think him, meaning his vessel of flesh. You need this power. Tor-Vellum tasks Kylo to kneel before him. Tor-Vellum says, you call yourself a Sith, but the Sith are unrepentant, remorseless. You're haunted by the past, your very existence. Kylo says, I have no regrets. Tor-Vellum says, you lie. Until you sever yourself from the past, your fate will be the same as theirs. Tor-Vellum motions to the battlefield in the valley below. Empty Jedi Knight armor, vacant Sith Marauder armor beside it, withered husks of animals and men. Tor-Vellum says, the living force is nourishment. The more one consumes, the stronger one becomes. To take life is to cheat death. And then Kylo says, teach me. And that's where it sort of begins. And what happens is, like I was saying yesterday, Tor-Vellum is training Kylo Ren, but they do things. He shows him how to literally consume life, very vampire-esque, being able to take the living force. Because if the force surrounds us and binds the universe together, and it's created by all living things, that means everything is burning with the force. And what Tor-Vellum teaches Kylo Ren how to do is to remove the living force from living beings. There's a creature called a Gronk boar, a three-tusk Gronk boar, and we see Kylo Ren stealing, like literally taking out the living force from these creatures. I mean, he's literally using animals to learn how to suck the living force out, which I think I like that idea, and I like that Tor-Vellum is and he's become vampiristic, and that moves forward, and it's very, very interesting what goes on between them. And eventually there's a scene, and this would have been epic, kind of like the cave in Dagobah, where Kylo Ren actually confronts Darth Vader. Now it is a vision of Vader, but they fight. Darth Vader and Kylo Ren have a knockdown, drag-out duel. And of course, Kylo loses. And even though it's not really Vader, only what you take with you, but it's really interesting. And I was like, who wouldn't want to see that? And then, of course, Poe goes, I guess this would be the Zori Bliss scene, but when they land on Bonadan, that plays out very similar to what we saw in Rise of Skywalker, where basically they find a mystic, a seer, that is able to use what Rey has in her mind, kind of like, it was sort of like my Minority Report. There's a scene where a wooden ball, like what the pre-crime people had, and they're able to derive a star chart from the vision she's had of Kylo, of where she is supposed to go. And it was good. And then at the same time, they're also being pursued by the Knights of Ren. Is trying to tap into the Force. And you see him throughout the film trying to use the Force, and you find out that he actually has lightsabers that he's been collecting, and you don't
Wow.
know
Made
this.
a guillotine out of it or something?
Well, they did, but he's got his own lightsabers. They use light blade weapons, but there's
Yeah.
a great scene where Rose Tico has been captured, and she's in the Inquisition Center, and Hux is torturing her, a la Han Solo in Empire Strikes Back.
Yes.
And it's a great moment for Rose, and Hux is saying, "Are you comfortable?" And Rose says, "Oh yes," as she's in the torture chair. "Yes, I have one of these at home." And Hux says, "You changed the stolen destroyer's signature code so he couldn't trace it. Give me the new codes." And Rose says, "You know, they told me to pick something easy to remember, like Life Day, but you think this is funny? Very well." He holds out his hand, shuts his eyes, concentrating deep. And Rose says, "Are you trying to use the Force on me?" Another thing that the script does really well is it fleshes out the Knights of Ren. And the Knights of Ren have been tracking, like we saw in Rise of Skywalker, have been tracking Poe and Finn and Chewie in the Millennium Falcon. And there's a great scene on Bonadan where the Knights of Ren have spotted them, and they end up, there's a chase with a sailing ship, and it's really like literally on the water. And they're on the water in like this space catamaran or whatever, and the Knights of Ren are attacking them from the air. And again, it harks back to what we saw in Rise of Skywalker, but Bonadan is a much different environment. You see the water, and I'm sure that's where they got the idea of the ocean, and with the remnants of the Death Star. But in this, we get to see something different, and there's a bow cannon on this thing, and it's great. Bonadan Bay sunset. Poe and Rey speed across the bay toward the landing array. The boat is very fast. Something fires from above, exploding the water all around. And that's the Knife 9. That's what it's called in the script. That's the Knights of Ren ship. Poe says, "Get to the bow cannon, I'll drive." And then, of course, you have all the Knights of Ren are all named. Hataska Ren. I don't know if I haven't looked at the visual dictionary for Rise of Skywalker yet, so I don't know. But they call this ship that they're on a razor sail, which I think is really, really cool. And so there's Chewbacca, and they're trying to get to Chewbacca, and it's really interesting. And then, of course, when they get there's a huge battle at the end with all of the Knights of Ren, and Rey fights them all, and it's great. I mean, it's really, really, really cool. So there's you just see more environments. The Knights of Ren are far more fleshed out, and it's really interesting. And what I really liked, and I didn't say this was my favorite scene. I was talking about this last night on Midnight's Edge, but Rey is having visions, and as she's fighting the Knights of Ren, she kills them. and it's not good. She's very upset about this. She's very conflicted. And Rey says, she's like, I had no choice. And Poe says, that's okay. Jedi do that, right? And Rey knows, she's seen the Knights of Ren before. She knows who they are, but even though she hasn't met them, and it's very interesting. Rey says, this is when Rey says to Poe, you can't go where I'm going. Like, you can't go. And Poe says, what are you talking about? This is the plan. And Rey says the Resistance needs him. And Poe's like, you have to get on the ship, Rey. You have to come with me right now. And Rey says, you have to leave this place. And Poe says, I'm not leaving you. And keep in mind, there is this flirtatious relationship between Poe and Rey. Mm-hmm. And Poe is always trying to make some time with Rey. Like, hey, baby, what's up? And Rey has none of it. She's constantly saying to him, look, this isn't the time. And she's saying this throughout the whole script. And when she's going to leave and go off on her own, and it's the last time she's going to see Poe and Chewie, she's trying to get Poe to leave. You've got to go back to the Resistance. And she finally stops and she says, he's not having any of it. And Tallulah, please. She stops. She stops and she literally Jedi mind tricks him, and she says, you will go back to the Resistance, and you will leave and go back to the Resistance. And he's like, don't you do that to me. Don't you do that to me. And she keeps doing it. and he's resisting her Jedi mind powers, and it plays back to obviously Obi-Wan Kenobi and A New Hope, and it's such a great scene. And he's resisting until she finally gets close enough to him where she can actually touch his face, and she says, "You will go back to the Resistance," and she kisses him. She never kisses Kylo in this script. She kisses Poe, and that's when Poe's like, "I will go back to the Resistance." And that's when, and it's so you guys laugh. It's such a great, because it plays off on her powers. It's just so great. It was such a great moment. And then, of course, Rey takes off, and she takes the Knights of Ren's ship. And then Poe and BB-8 and Chewie leave on the Falcon, and they go back to the stolen Eclipse Star Destroyer to join the Resistance again. And it's very interesting. So Hux and Kylo Ren have a conversation that and also as I've told you, in the middle of the broadcast, it was cut off by the First Order. The First Order was able to cut off the broadcast from the Jedi Temple. And Chancellor Hux contacts Kylo Ren, and after he's leaving Remnicor's orbit, Kylo Ren is in space, and Chancellor Hux contacts Kylo Ren, and Hux says the Resistance tried to overcome the blockade, and Kylo says, "Do you really not know who stopped them?" And it was obviously Kylo did it from afar. And Chancellor Hux says, "Such treachery cannot stand. We must respond swiftly." And Kylo says, "Our empire is strong. Show them." And Hux says, "Your absence emboldens them. If you've acquired the power you seek, show it." Kylo says, "Snoke was right about you, Hux. Without faith, you serve only yourself." And then Kylo shuts off transmissions and blasts off into light speed on his way to Mortis. Princess Leia goes and finds Lando Calrissian and asks if Lando will help organize the smugglers and join the fight. Leia goes to the planet Oliphorn. I guess it's Oliphorn. There's a cabaret club. Classy, smoke-filled lampshades on the tables, no customers left, only alien servers cleaning up and cashing out. A slovenly band manager divides up credits between a pair of quad-armed XEXTOS Zextos at the two pianos on stage. And of course, this is Lando Calrissian's club. And you see it says that Leia's shadow falls over the pile of credits. I imagine it was like when Indiana Jones would have showed up to see Marion Ravenwood. I kind of felt like it was going to be like that. Like they're cleaning up the bar and you see the shadow of Indiana Jones. "Hello, Marion." And Leia says, "A man in his element." I'm sure when they were writing this script, it just felt like this whole thing feels like it's the scene from Raiders when you go see Marion and Lando looks up and sees Leia. And it's very funny. It says Lando jumps to his feet quickly and he brings her hand to his lips and he's going to kiss her hand. And Leia's like, all right. I mean, it's very, you can see the whole thing play out. And Lando's like, "You shouldn't be here." And Leia's like, "For your sake or mine?" And Lando's like, "Both." But it was a great scene. And Lando explains that his clientele are mostly First Order, but what can he do? It just harks back to where he was at Bespin. And Leia says to Lando, "I need your help. Please help me out. We need ships, pilots, smugglers." That's the big thing, is Leia's like, smugglers. So, and Lando says, "Look, I promised Han I would take care of you if something happened." And Leia's like, "You'd take care of me?" It's a great scene. And Lando's like, "I know, you deserve better, but helping your new friends crash into the First Order's machine isn't what he would have wanted." And Leia's trying to appeal to him and say, "Look, the galaxy needs you." And Lando's like, "Remind me never to make promises." And they go down into a docking bay and takes her back to her shuttle. And Lando's like, "You need to go. I can't protect you." And she's like, "Come with me, fight with us." And Lando's like, "No, we won a war once already. And what good did that do?" And it was interesting to hear Lando referring to the fact that, yeah, we won the war, but the First Order came back. I mean, nobody ever really talks about that in this new trilogy. And Lando says he would do anything for her, and he kisses her on the forehead and then apologizes. And he's not going to help. Rose is captured by the First Order and tortured. Eventually, she's going to escape. When Rey is also going to Mortis, they've extracted the information from her mind, and it's very interesting that she flashes back, and there's no stars visible around this planet. It's only deep black, and this is Mortis, and the power drops out when she tries to land, and her ship it crashes. When Rey and Kylo Ren are at Mortis, the well of the living force, the origins of the living force in the galaxy, she's scaling an icy peak, blasted by wind and sleet. She reaches a plateau, and she finds the robed ancients. She finds statues of the robed ancients that are not Jedi. And there's snow and wind and whipping around her, and then suddenly she's having a vision, and she's back in the desert in Jakku, and she's over the dunes, and she hears a child's voice scream out, and she sees herself as young Rey being dragged away by her mother and father, and then they let her go, and they leave Rey, and you see the horror of being left behind by her parents. And then Rey's mother breaks free and runs towards her, but the father holds her back. The father says, "We can't, it's too dangerous." And then you see the mother say, "Wait here, we'll come back. You'll understand, we'll come back. Just wait." And Rey is screaming as she has this vision. And that is when Kylo Ren shows up, and it's really interesting. And then Kylo Ren doesn't show up yet, but she pulls her lightsaber out, and she's screaming why she wants to know why they didn't come back, and it's really great. And then you see the same thing. Kylo Ren is now on Mortis again. He is going through the woods. He's traipsing through Mortis as well, and he finds a house in the woods, and smoke is coming from the chimney. And the script talks about how his younger self, Ben Solo, approaches this house. He wears all black robes, a hood. This is clearly a Force-induced vision that he's having. And Kylo is watching his younger self approach this house. And his younger self opens the door, and it's Han Solo. Han Solo is there, and Han asks what he's doing. And the young Ben says, "That's not my name anymore." And Han Solo says, your mother can't see you here, not like this. And Ben says to Han, "I'm not coming back. There's a greater destiny for me." And Han says, "They're lies, son, empty promises. You have everything you need right here, right now." And Ben says, "What, you? Her? My master says I have unequaled power. Neither of you understand." And Han Solo says, "Your mother understands more than anyone." And Ben says, "She sent me away." And Han says, "To learn, to grow." And Ben says, "I have grown." Han says, "Your mother loves you." And Ben says, "She's afraid of me." And Han says, "Give me the lightsaber, son." And Han reaches for the lightsaber, and Ben says, "You know I can't." And then it cuts to Kylo killing Han Solo. That was actually the vision that he has. And it's really interesting. And then Kylo starts going up the same mountain that Rey has already been up. And then, of course, there's all kinds of craziness. The battle over Coruscant in the skies and in the streets is an amazing battle. But what we really want to know is how this movie ends, and how is the Rey-Kylo Ren confrontation. And we go back to they're at the Temple of Mortis, and Kylo finally confronts Rey at the top of this mountain. There's a huge temple, the Temple of Mortis, and they meet, and he goes in, and you see Kylo Ren with his Beskar helmet, the visage of his damaged face. And Kylo says, "The Force is strong in this place. Can you feel it?" And Rey says, "You're in pain beneath that mask." And Kylo says, "Get out of my head. You won't like what you find." And they start using their Force powers against each other. He says, "I'm stronger than Anakin Skywalker, stronger than his son." "But you're still afraid," says Rey. "Of what? You? Of what you've become. The dark side has left you empty, a husk. I don't have to be alone, says Kylo. With the power of this place, we could rule the galaxy as the ancients did, the dark side and the light. And Rey says, you still think I'd join you after what you did to my family? And that sets Kylo back. Were you going to tell me here, weaken me with the truth? I know what you did. Deep down, I've always known. And then this is the most interesting part. Rey says, my parents didn't sell me for drinking money. They were hiding from you. Kylo says, so you remember. And there's a flash to the Knights of Ren in the rain, and the image from Rey's Force vision when she first touched the lightsaber. And a distant child screams. Kylo says, Snoke made his orders clear. Find anyone who could destroy him. It didn't take us long to find you. Rey finds out the truth. The Knights of Ren and Kylo killed Rey's parents. And Kylo says, you blame me for your life on Jakku. You should thank me for it. You were safe. Rey says, say it, did you kill them? And then Kylo says, yes, I did. And then Rey says, you murdered Han Solo. Kylo says, I'm not here for you, Rey. Rey says, you murdered millions of people. Kylo says, all I want is behind that door. And Rey says, you'll have to kill me. And Kylo says, I know. And they start this massive knockdown, drag-out fight. And eventually what ends up happening between them is there is an epic battle. And what Kylo learns is they literally start trying to take the living force out of each other. And there's something, I'm going to cut to something because I wanted to talk about this because it's really funny. I talked about this last night on Midnight's Edge. There's a moment in this script that I thought was hilarious where during the Battle of Coruscant it says that R2-D2 and C-3PO are walking through lasers. And they see a First Order astromech droid, an R8-08 droid, finds a flipped tank and plugs into this flipped tank. And the droid is sending a distress signal. And C-3PO says, he's sending a distress signal. Stop him. And no one's listening to C-3PO. R2's just beeping furiously. And C-3PO says, me? I'm not programmed for violence, R2. And then R2's like, beep, 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 do something. And C-3PO puts himself and literally runs through laser fire, runs to this First Order astromech droid, and rips the back panel of it off. And C-3PO says, I do apologize for this. And he reaches into the droid's innards and starts ripping the innards out of this droid. He literally C-3PO straight up murders a droid. And then he's saying R2's beeping, and then C-3PO is even more horrified, and he realizes what he's doing. He's telling the droid, he's like, please go quietly, and then he gives one last yank, and then C-3PO is there, and Finn comes running by, and C-3PO is fretting over the inanimate shell of the R8-08 and says, I've done horrible things. I may never be the same. And it's just funny. I mean, there's these great C-3PO moments that I really love. And then we go back to the Temple of Mortis, and Kylo says, I could have been your teacher. I could have ended your pain. And they're just battling each other. And Kylo strikes a blow across her face, and leaving a scar from her cheek to her forehead. Rey drops the lightsaber to the stone. She falls to her knees and screams, clutching her eyes. She's been blinded. Kylo Ren blinds Rey in this battle. And Rey is crying blood, and she falls back down the stairs, and you think that this is it for Rey. And then Kylo goes into the Temple of Mortis. And it's really amazing. And when he goes into the Temple of Mortis, and again we cut back to the Battle of Coruscant, and it's amazing. And the battle is amazing. The epic battle. Everybody going from the square, going from the First Order Citadel, the headquarters, to space and back, and it's just great. I mean, the whole battle is really cool. It's really epic. And then R2-D2 gets blown up, gone. And R2-D2's head is scorched, emotion like we've never seen from C-3PO. Finn is speechless. He's crushed by it all. And then Chewbacca takes R2's scorched shell onto his back, again, repeating what Chewbacca did in Bespin when Chewbacca found wrecked C-3PO, does the same thing with R2. And everybody's upset, of course. But then here's where the great stuff happens. So we come back to the Temple of Mortis, and Kylo Ren goes into the temple. Kylo Ren's long shadow precedes him into the cavern of stone. Statues of the ancients look down into a deep void in the center, sealed with a slab of unpolished marble. Kylo reaches out. The stone slab slides off and falls to the ground with a thud. He looks down into the well beneath the temple, deep into the heart of Mortis, eager for his reward. But it's empty. Nothing. A hole in the ground.
Yeah.
Kylo says no. He searches the rune-covered walls for answers. He finds only arcane sculpted faces looking down at him. He fires his saber and slashes at the statue, scarring the ancients with his rage. Luke, you've lost, Ben. Luke Skywalker steps into the light. A thin blue glow traces his form. You're dead. The Jedi are ghosts. Luke, the dark side has failed you like it failed my father. Kylo, your father was weak. Luke, his love for his family saved him. I wish it could save you. Luke looks deep into his former student's pained eyes. I did what I had to do. Luke, you chose hate. Kylo, I chose power. Kylo fires his saber and attacks, but Luke catches the blade with his gloved hand, stopping it in midair, stronger than Kylo could possibly imagine. I'll be stronger than any Skywalker has ever been, says Kylo. Their faces are inches away, separated by the red blade. Luke, you are no Skywalker. Rey lies motionless on the stone steps, blind and bleeding in the rain. Then her hand moves, her eyes flutter open. Rey says, Luke. In the Temple of Mortis night, Luke's expression changes, sensing her. Let go, Kylo. You cannot defeat us. Kylo, us? Luke, I am not alone. Obi-Wan was right. Exterior Temple Mount night, Rey drags her shattered body up the temple steps. Her arm gives out, and she collapses. The pain is too much. Luke, we're all connected, all living things. And then it cuts to the Eclipse Star Destroyer that Leia is commanding. Leia looks beyond the battle, feeling Rey's pain. Leia says, Rey. Luke says, the Force surrounds us. And then it goes, there's a lot of stuff going. And then it says, it cuts to the Capital Navigation subspace relay on Coruscant. Rose winces from the sparks as she rewires the hyperdrive on the Capital, fingertips bleeding. She looks up, a feeling. She hears Luke. It penetrates us. Interior Millennium Falcon night. Poe flies through a barrage of laser fire. Luke says it binds the galaxy together. He feels the connection from across the galaxy. Poe says, Rey. The Temple Mount night. Rey into the rain. Poe gathers her strength. Finn. Exterior Coruscant. Imperial Boulevard sunset. Finn is crouched low behind cover. Lasers flying overhead. Luke, we are bound. We are one. Bound by the Force. Finn feels the connection, a surge of hope. Finn says, fight, Rey, fight. Exterior Temple Mount night. Rey hears him. He's there with her. They all are. Finn, his voiceover, a distant echo. Fight. The Temple of Mortis. Luke gives his former student a faint smile. Luke says, and we will not be broken. Exterior Temple Mount night. With all of her strength, the last Jedi rises. She unwraps a strip of cloth from the bandage on her head, and she uses it to blindfold her eyes. Interior Temple of Mortis night. Luke vanishes. Behind him, Rey stands tall in the arched doorway, blind, bruised, determined. Rey says, our masters were wrong. I will not deny my anger, and I will not reject my love. Her fallen lightsaber flies into her hands. Rey, I am the darkness. I am the light. Kylo says, you are nothing. You are no one. Now, this is something, the next line, Poe, at the beginning of the movie, when Rey is explaining to Poe that she has no family, that she really is no one, it's Poe who says to her, well, no one is no one. People are someone. So Kylo says, you are nothing. You are no one. She ignites the blades and they crackle. Rey says, no one is no one. Kylo charges, their blades meet and sizzle. Rey fights him blindfolded, guided by the Force. We cut to the Eclipse. See, Tallulah's excited. We cut to the Eclipse Star Destroyer. The burning Resistance cruisers plummet to landfall. Leia watches the fiery carnage out of her observation window. The battle is over. Connix, more ships are arriving from the Outer Rim, General. Leia, prepare to retreat. These aren't First Order ships. Leia looks out at the starfield ahead. Off her surprise, 1,000 ships appear from hyperspace. A massive fleet of smugglers and thieves flying tricked-out, junkyard-bound personal cruisers. The pirates Han Solo spent half his life running from, and in the lead is Lando's personal starship, the Lady Luck. Lando Calrissian at the helm of the controls. Lando, I thought you could use a few scoundrels. Nine Island, an aging alien in a vintage bomber jacket, shakes his head in the co-pilot's chair, and he says, I'm too old for this shit in an alien language. Lando's ragtag fleet attacks. So again, it's not everybody. Lando, earlier on the script, Leia goes to see Lando, and they get
The smugglers.
the smugglers. It's the smugglers, and it's
I
all
love that.
the brigands. The First Order capital is actually a ship. And it when they're losing, the tide of the battle is turning. The First Order ship is taking off, and it's leaving, and you think they're going to escape. And when Rose escaped their clutches, she intentionally reprogrammed their hyperdrive navigation system. And so in this thing, the final part of the battle is it ends up going to hyperspace, and it smashes. The end of the First Order is their Capitol building, which is really also a starship, smashes into a planet, destroying them all. And it's just a great moment, because again, you weren't expecting it, and it was a result of them working together. And also, there are a lot of former stormtroopers. We saw a little bit of that in Rise of Skywalker, but these former stormtroopers have been underground in Coruscant organizing. And they were already there, and Finn finds them, and they team up. And there's all of these ideas that we saw snippets of in The Rise of Skywalker, but they're far more developed in this script.
Didn't you mention that he actually remembers them from when he was
Yes.
young, that he'd grown up with them in a sort of way? And
Yes.
so
Interior, Temple of Mortis, night. Kylo counters Rey's every move. They're evenly matched, two sides of a coin, flame and shadow, fighting to the death. A vicious swing, and Kylo's lightsaber shatters at the hilt, destroyed, along with several fingers on his left hand cut across the palm. He looks at it with disbelief, stumbles back toward the empty well of Mortis, and falls to one knee. Rey stands over him, anger flowing. She separates her dual lightsaber, holds one blade pointed to Kylo's chest. Kylo is stunned by the powerful being before him. She's almost glowing. Unfathomable living force within. Kylo clenches his teeth, eyes furious, a rage like we haven't seen since Anakin. He reaches out the open palm of his good hand and extracts the living force from Rey as Tor Valum taught him. She rises, energy flowing from her body into Kylo's hand as the life drains from her. She pulls her blindfold off and screams to the sky. Kylo stands tall, energized. His face has returned to normal, healed. He pulls the iron plates off of his skin. They fall away, healthy flesh underneath. He looks beyond Rey to the empty well of Mortis. Kylo, they were wrong, all of them. The power of this place can't be taken. Rey says, Ben. Kylo says, but it's nothing compared to you. Kylo takes more from her. Rey is almost gone, drained of life. She summons all her strength and reaches out. With the last of herself, she offers him her hand. Rey, Ben, please. Cut to Eclipse Destroyer Bridge space. Leia feels the disturbance, and it pains her. Into the vastness of space, she says her son's name. Ben. Interior, Temple of Mortis, night. Then Kylo hears his mother's voice, carried by the Force. Leia, Ben. He stops, hearing Leia, feeling her close. Leia says, come back, come home. Something happens to Kylo when he hears his mother's voice. And then we cut to the Star Destroyer again. Leia speaks to her son through the Force. Leia says, help us. Temple of Mortis night. Kylo feels the very thing that destroyed Anakin, but doesn't make him feel weak. He looks at Rey's outstretched hand and takes it. The living force flows back into her. Both light and dark swirl within Rey as Kylo is reduced to an empty shell, a man without power, a frightened boy. Kylo and Rey collapse into one another, each propping the other up on their knees. Rey is close to him now, their foreheads touching. He is weakened and spent. In the last moments of his life, Kylo says, Solana. Rey is stunned. It is her name, distant like a memory.
What?
Kylo, your name, with his last breath, is Rey Solana. Those words are Ben Solo's last. Rey watches the light dim in his eyes, but it is the light and not the darkness. Rey says goodbye, Ben. With a look that could be perceived as love, Ben Solo dies. Rey releases her hold, collapses, barely alive herself. They have fought to the death. Now, this is the one. So we after that thing about Rey and Kylo, we go back to the Battle of Coruscant, and then we come back to the Temple of Mortis. It's night. Rey lies flat on the stone. Silence. Light fills the space around her, particles of energy floating up. She rises with them. The light engulfs the frame until we reach a place beyond what we know. This is the astral plane. Glimmers of energy flicker like fireflies in the darkness. Rey opens her eyes again, clear, unburdened. 3 of the distant glimmers grow larger than the others. She moves toward them. Yoda, Luke Skywalker, and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Rey says, "Is this death?" Obi-Wan, "In this place, there is no such thing as death." Rey, who'd been blinded earlier, says, "I can see." Obi-Wan says, "Your true self is free of suffering and free of pain." Yoda says, "Taught us much you have." Rey, "I've taught you?" Succeeded where we have failed. Narrow was our point of view. Luke, you chose to embrace the dark side and the light, to find balance within. Yoda, coexist they must, as such feelings do in all of us. Rey, but if I'm here with you, a choice you must make, to return or to remain. Luke, here there is serenity, knowledge, peace, those lost but not forgotten. She looks beyond them at the shimmering flecks of energy. And there, Rey says, and there, Obi-Wan says, there you will face a galaxy in turmoil, pain, suffering, the loss of those you love. Yoda, but living you will be. Love you shall. We hold on Rey's face as she considers the life she's yet to live and makes her decision. Rey, thank you. The spirits fade into the cosmic force. As the light overwhelms us, Obi-Wan Kenobi's voice echoes. You are a Jedi, Rey Solana, but you will not be the last. And then there's one last thing that I really loved about this script. And I, again, Chewie is working on, is building R2. And a repair droid, and also a repair droid is rebuilding his destroyed frame, and C-3PO is there, and Leia comes in and says, how's he coming along? C-3PO says, a quick cycle through his memory banks, and he'll be his old self again, I hope. Leia says, he'll be fine, C-3PO. And 3PO says, I can't imagine what I'd do without him. I know he's stubborn, but it's almost as if 3PO is going to cry. And Leia says, I know. Now, what's really cool is, then Leia picks up R2's intact memory drive rescued by BB-8. And she puts it into R2-D2, reminiscent of the first time we ever saw the princess with a droid, and R2 comes back to life. As his files catalog into chronological order, he projects the contents of his memory banks, and we witness their adventures over 60 years, all from the droid's perspective. Luke buying C-3PO from the Jawas, Obi-Wan giving Luke his father's lightsaber, R2 flying through the Death Star trench, Han getting his medal on Yavin, Yoda lifting the X-Wing from the swamp, Luke saluting from the plank on Jabba's barge, Han and Leia outside the bunker on Endor. Leia is taken aback by the flood of memories. It is a catharsis for her and for us. And Leia says, thank you, R2, and beeps affectionately. And then that is the last scene with Leia and R2. Then we cut to a different planet, a planet called Modesta. And there's a ranch, very serene, and Finn is there, and there are girls and people, and its children are there, and at the end, Rey Solana arrives to train presumably a new group of Jedi, and that's how the script ends.